Hi, all. These are generally conversations between adults after the children have left the table. The language can be spicy, and the subjects can get saucy. So, if you're ready, this is the Southern Fork, unscripted chats with some of the most interesting culinary voices in the American South. This region is one of the country's vacation and retirement playgrounds, but beyond the warm weather and beautiful scenery, there's a rich culture steeped in community and often dark and complicated history, and plenty of innovation among the tradition. I'm Stephanie Burt, and I've spent a career covering this region for magazines, newspapers, and websites. And to me, the best introduction to the American South is through its food culture and the growers and makers who make it delicious. I invite you to come on the road with me from the Appalachian Mountains to the clear waters of the Gulf of Mexico and everywhere in between. I'm always hungry for that next bite, thirsty for the next sip, and ready for the next conversation. Let's dig in. The Southern Fork is supported today by an anonymous donor. Thank you for making the show possible. I have a passion for sustainable seafood, and it's been both an important subject here on this show and the subject of many of my written pieces throughout the years. When I first interviewed Sammy Monsour in 2020, I discovered that we shared this passion, and I've watched as he has really blossomed into a chef leader on this front. Therefore, when I heard that he and Kassady Wiggins, his wife and beverage director partner, wanted to write a cookbook about Southern seafood, I encouraged them to go for it. What has resulted is Salt and Shore, recipes from the coastal South, filled with stories, sips, and plenty of recipes and photographs that will make you long for sea breezes if you're missing them. It's a vibe, something that Kassady and Sammy excel at in their restaurants, which include the now closed Preux and Proper in LA, that gained a Michelin Bib Gourmand in 2019, and Joyce Soul and Sea, where they teamed up with founders and operators Preux and Athena Riley. Joyce was named a Southern Oasis in LA by LA Times food critic Bill Addison, and the Carolina natives bring Southern flavors to both the food and beverage programs. They're living bi-coastal these days between LA and Charleston and dreaming of their next project. Me? After this conversation, I'm dreaming of hush puppies, so I'm glad there are 2 recipes to choose from in their book. Welcome to the Southern Fork, you two.
Thank you. Happy
Great
to be here.
Well, so happy to have you back, Sammy. You know, it's such a thrill. I was like, what? I'm never going to see this dude again. And then I'm like, what? You moved to Charleston? What? You're writing a cookbook? It's been a wonderful journey to get to know you through the pandemic years and now with Choice Open and other projects afoot.
Absolutely. And, you know, we're happy to see your name pop up and be in the same city.
I feel like even if we never moved here, we would have gone out of our way to stay connected because we just love everything that you do and
Thanks.
The essence of which you do it with.
Thank you. And that's very kind of you to say. And I feel like we were kindred spirits when we chatted. And I think this cookbook proves it, you two. So it's wonderful. I loved reading it. I didn't read the whole thing, but I have read good sections. I've read my name a couple of times, so I have to say I'm a little biased on this one. I had a little behind the scenes knowledge ahead of time, and I appreciate that. I'm very grateful. I love the emphasis on connecting the coastal regions, and obviously this is a passion for both of you. It involves sustainability, it involves travel, it involves food. How did you start your love of seafood? What is the first seafood that you loved?
I just think back to when I was a kid, going out to eat with my grandparents up in, the Asheville area, and we were just real, Southern about it, going to like fried fish camps and whatnot, and just a basket of fried flounder and hush puppies was probably my first seafood memory. So I'm going to have to say flounder.
Flounder is solid, yeah.
All right. I agree with you on fried fish, fried seafood. I think in tandem, around the same time, I fell in love with the Calabash style fried shrimp sandwich with hush puppies, of course.
Right.
And the New Orleans classic, the fried oyster po' boy.
Fried oyster po' boy. Mm-hmm. I did not want to get near a fried oyster. I thought they were gross.
Well, I fell in love with the fried oyster po' boy at my parents' restaurant in Chapel Hill. To me, it was just a treat, and it was rare. It was a rare treat. I wasn't allowed to eat it whenever I wanted, so maybe like once a month I'd get one.
That's cool. Yeah. You met in restaurants, and you both went on a journey to write this cookbook. Can you talk to us a little bit behind the scenes about your location work? Because you're not just sitting at a desk calling people. You were visiting the purveyors.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to bounce it over to Sammy on that one, just because he's got a better memory of exactly where we went.
Exhaustively toured around for 3 years, toured around the coastlines from North Carolina all the way. So let's start at New Bern and then over to Emerald Isle, down the coast, Wrightsville Beach, Wilmington, Calabash. Not going to name everything, okay, because it'll take forever, but extensively all the way down to Miami, drove through the Everglades, drove throughout the entire Panhandle, Gulf Coast of Florida, all the way to the Texas-Mexico border, and not just in one shot. Like over periods of time, going to places a few times, going to places we've been before and we love, but now with this purpose, going to places that we'd never been, or maybe I've been there, but Cass hasn't, and vice versa. Even like New Orleans, our favorite city, one of our favorite cities rather, I think we went 3 times throughout that with just different purposes in mind. One of which time it was like we needed to go visit a crawfish farm in Louisiana, and it was like 2 hours outside of New Orleans. But the time of year that we went to do it was during Mardi Gras, because that was a very good time of year to tour that farm when they were going to start harvesting the crawfish, which is part of why like the crawfish celebrations, eating of the crawfish is around certain holidays, because it happens to be harvest time. So learning these things, when do we get to go tour? Wait, we should go to Mardi Gras as well. It had nothing to do with the book, but it kind of had everything to do with the book.
It kind of has everything to do with the book. And that, I think, is a really important part of the kind of work that I do, is that food is in context, right? So the seasonal thing, the spring mud bug that is starting to get big right around Mardi Gras, and that is the time that you harvest it. Well, that's just another symbol of spring.
Absolutely.
And so it just makes sense that it would be connected with Mardi Gras. And then, I mean, if you can do Mardi Gras and count it as work, I mean, why would you do that? That's pretty cool. Now, cocktails. When we're pairing cocktails with seafood, people don't think about cocktails being paired. They just think about white wine.
Right, absolutely.
So can you talk a little bit about your vision for that part of the book?
I think that when you welcome someone into your home, or you're just, about to enjoy dinner, I think a drink, whether it be non-alcoholic or with alcohol, is a great place to start. And I always try to mimic the flavors in the cocktail to the flavors in the dish. So if there's cucumber in the dish, I want to put cucumber in the cocktail. If it's, more Mexican inspired, I might go with like the Mezcalarita del Diablo that's in the book. There's a great tuna and watermelon salad that Sammy has in one of the chapters, and that goes great with the Punk Evans, which has watermelon in it. So it kind of like cross-utilize the ingredients throughout. And nothing is too heavy, in my personal opinion. If there's like a heavier cocktail, I would obviously want to put that with fried fish.
Right.
But there's also very like light and refreshing things that can handle the raw bar kind of side of it.
One of the things that we talk a lot about with the beverage pairings is thinking about what kind of drinks that you want to have at certain meals that aren't alcoholic, and using those to inform how you create I mean, Kassady does the creating, but we have the conversations where it's like, for example, fried fish. A lot of people are just going to have a soda pop with fried fish, you know? So let's do something.
Or if you're in my family, sweet tea.
There you go.
Yeah,
And it's got to sound like that. Sweet tea.
Exactly, right? And so you can have fun with taking tea and making an infusion and making a cocktail that doesn't straightforward come across to you like, oh, this is inspired by grape soda or this is inspired by sweet tea, but it is, and that's why it works.
Now, I never get to ask this question, but because it's this cookbook and this conversation, do you use saline ever in your cocktails?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love the addition of salt in most cocktails. It just brings out the flavor so much more vibrantly, just like it does in a dish. I'm not opposed to putting saline in anything.
And it's more than just a salt rim, right? Can you give us an example of how you would add it in a cocktail?
I just make it into like a little solution. I think I do about 80% water to 20% sea salt or kosher salt, depending on what kind of flavor you want to get out of it. And then just add a couple drops, just like you would bitters, and it really opens up the flavor profile.
Yeah, that's cool.
Seasoning.
I want to ask you, Sammy, you've been such a proponent of sustainable seafood for so long, and it's really just captured your creative imagination, but also it's very much been a platform for you as a chef. Instead of saying what's bad, we hear so much about, this much gets imported from China. You have been traveling for years studying this book. What are you really excited about when it comes to sustainable seafood right now?
Wow. That's a big question.
You can slice it up however you want.
Well, let's go the book focuses, and I'd say that for the most part that this is what I'm most excited about right now, is what the book focuses on, and that is the wild caught seafood species from the southeastern fisheries of the U.S. So that's going to be the southeastern Atlantic, the Gulf Coast, and the Caribbean. There's some really amazing seafood involved in those wild fisheries. On top of that, in addition to that, rather, also the aquaculture, the sustainable aquaculture that's going on, be it saltwater, freshwater, or even on land in tanks. You know, I mean, seeing where those industries are and tasting the delicious offerings and treasures. And I mean, and again, remembering that seafood is also sea vegetables. So, I mean, there's just, I'll give you an example. It's just so dynamic, but I think that there might be like over 60 species of seafood in the cookbook. And so even though there's like maybe 3 or 4 crab recipes, it's not, and maybe 3 or 4 shrimp recipes, it's not like a pedestrian cookbook. It's the reason why there's 3 or 4 crab recipes. And I think even in one of the chapters, there's 3 crab recipes in a row, because it's like, this is very representative of the concept of this chapter and the communities in which we're channeling through as we create. So like, why would we limit it? Why would we be finicky? But there's also like so many unsung heroes. And I just, so it's exciting to me to be like, wow, like you're not limited. What do you want to cook with? What do you want to get on your hands? And then if you can't get that, there's 5 other options that we could recommend that you could probably have access to that are just as interesting and unique.
Right, right. As a chef, and I know a lot of chefs listen to this, it's really easy because restaurants are really hard to say, okay, I want to get the product that I can always get. But when you're working with wild caught things and things that are seasonal and have catch limits, you have to be able to move with the shift in your product. Will you give us a little glimpse into how you train your chefs to work with varying seafood product? Because you're not always in your restaurant.
Correct. When you start to look at sourcing as data, and you break it down in some sort of a matrix, and you go, okay, so I've got farm raised, and then I've on one side, and then I've got wild caught on the other. And we're already determined that we're only looking at what's sustainable. The beauty with farm raised is that it's usually produced and available year round. And so a great example of that is like oysters. You know, there's still this old adage that it's like, don't eat oysters in like months that end with like Y or something. I don't even R, right? I'm like, well, like, yeah, tell that to Trey McMillan over at Low Country Oysters, who's selling me oysters 12 months out of the year.
Right.
Doesn't make any sense when you're talking about farm raising.
But
right?
that was also before refrigeration, too.
Yeah,
so
but people still hold on to these.
They do.
Old
they get really
adages
stuck.
and say, oh, well, you can't. And I mean, I'm talking about, like, I've called local, not going to name names, local famous seafood, like, counters, even in Charleston, and said, hey, what kind of oysters do y'all have right now? And like, oh, we're not stocking any this time of year. It's a month that starts with whatever that.
Yeah.
Listen, I never learned that because when I was first taught that, I was taught that in culinary school, and I was explained that that was misinformation. And that was 20 years ago. So anyway, like, when you're sourced, to get back to it all, it's like, it's everything about sourcing seafood is complex, but there's a lot of wiggle room in terms of, like, you say, let's say, like, around 70% of what I'm going to have consistently on my menu or at home are going to be things that are readily available. And I'm on the hunt for, like, my favorite shrimp or my favorite oyster, or, you know, what I think is the best crab and the best salmon. Like, you know, there's like a top 10 list of staples that maybe you're not always going to carry in your household or in your restaurant, but you're like, hey, this is my go-to. If I'm dealing with trout, I'm going to get it from Sunburst Trout Farms, or maybe, you know, Snake River out of Idaho, because they're a great outfit as well. And so once you've established your go-tos, you have more mental capacity and flex room to just look at what's available for your seasonal local market catch, right?
That's a smart way to go about it. So you fill in with that seasonal catch.
So if like 30% of what you're getting your hands on is just playfulness, like, ooh, that grouper looks amazing. But it's also like, grouper's going to be around for like 3 months. You don't have to change it every single week. You can just make something great with grouper.
Right. Right.
You know, if you're shopping at home, just try something new every time. You know?
I do
Next.
that. I've had really bad fails.
That's
just part of it.
Exactly.
It is part of it. And I think that we address a lot of that in this book.
Yes.
To make it so that you don't have fails, and that you're not just following like a recipe, but you're learning universal skill set for sourcing and cooking seafood, that you will be a better fish cook throughout practicing these recipes.
So writing this book together, this was a lot. I mean, I don't understand how to write with another person. So can you talk about the division of labor? Obviously, Sammy's going to be the recipe person, but did you edit? How did you work it out?
I mean, we kind of had a lot of recipes like in our head that, you know, Sammy's cooked, I've made, you know, in the past or just at home. And then in terms of the actual writing, like the intros, the headers, the essays, we're both ADHD. So we'll kind of be like, okay, I have the capacity today to do this, and then I'll work on it for X amount of time, and then I'm going to send it over to him, and then he's going to take his fresh set of eyes, look at it, edit it, and vice versa.
Yeah,
That's
so
perfect.
it was really back and forth like bread and meth, you know? Like sometimes she would start it and I would finish it. Sometimes I would start it, she would finish it. Sometimes you would just knock it out of the park and you'd be like, I think this is kind of like a dog shit first draft. Check this out. And then the other one of us would be like, dude, this is perfect. It's ready to go. Like the more, you know, with writing, once you really get into it, you're just
you
like...
get a flow.
Yeah, you get
and
a flow.
there is a lot of writing. There's a lot of essays with this. And I think it anchors the book in a way that I find really exciting as a cookbook person. It anchors it in space and time, but it also anchors it in this larger community, from cornmeal to the cast iron skillets to this breading, all these different seasonal ingredients, and it's fun to read.
Thank you.
So yeah, I
We
was
really didn't
like,
want to like lose sight of that. I think it's easy to say, oh, like in today's day and age, to say, oh, that information's already out there. So like, what's the point? But so for us, our compass was to go back to like, yeah, but this is really cool to us. And these are the things that we really like talking about and sharing. And once it's all bundled up into its own unique little package, I think it does matter that we put it out there.
It does.
You know?
And I think that's a good reminder for people like me. I often feel like, am I adding to the noise and instead of adding to the conversation? And in reality, there's so much going on. There's a lot of people that didn't know anything about cornmeal. And they're going to read that and feel completely informed. And they're going to be informed because they want to cook this meal that, you know, this recipe. I like that idea. It makes for a whole world of a book. It feels very Southern. It doesn't feel like you said, I'm going to write about the South. And you did, you know, some recipes. It feels like, you know, the South. There's culture there beyond just food.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
It was a lot of work. And
I know how long it took.
Well, another thing I think that we thought about was like, hey, this will be one of our motives was this will be a great tool for like pre-shift lessons in the restaurant that you could just open it up and be like, all right, everybody open up to page 163. Let's read about bene seeds, you know?
Right.
So it's like, there's all these like things that we wrote through our perspective and our experience and our voices that we can now use over and over again as educational resources for our restaurants. And there's a lot of value in that for us.
I really think it like boils down to the people and the communities of the coastal South, whether it's the people that brought these ingredients over or the people that are growing it or the people that are catching it or, you know, the person that originally made this one dish. You know, it's all about just like the people, and the South is a really cool place. It gets a bad rap a lot of the times, but it's so filled with like different cultures and subsets, and it's a great place to really celebrate.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I know that this has been a big lift, and Joyce got just a little bit of fancy press in the last year or so. So that's been really great, but I know you too. I know it doesn't end here. So I have to ask, what is making you hungry? What are you percolating about now?
You know, I think the next project, because we can't keep our butts still, is we got ants in our pants. It's going to be opening up something here in Charleston, and hopefully the name of it will be Loretta's. And so we're just going to see kind of where that takes us.
Yeah. Okay. And I mean, we're like obsessed with this. Like, we've been like spending a lot of time on the financials and building the deck and the vision. And we want this to be our swan song. Like, I think we finally have the confidence to attempt to open the greatest restaurant we've ever been a part of in our entire careers and lives, and trying to make it like as good as the greatest restaurants that we've experienced throughout our traveling of the South, of the US, of the world, you know, and just being like, you know what, why do we always limit ourselves? Why are we holding ourselves back? Like, let's go for it. Let's make something that's just not like just drop dead, knockout, amazing. Do it in Charleston. You know,
that sounds wonderful.
I mean, at least give it our all, you know, like it'll still be us. It'll only be as good as it can be, which a lot of times is based off the merit of culture, a great team, and like amazing ingredients, you know? So these are things that we've become very passionate about and that have led to our success. So we think like, hey, we can do that. We can do that here, but let's step it up.
Great.
Because it will be a Southern restaurant. We're gunning to open a Southern restaurant in downtown Charleston. So you got to be crazy to do that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's going to be like, what?
I feel it.
Does Charleston need another Southern restaurant? Like, who are these guys?
Well, we'll find out. We'll find out. That's great. And I do think creatively, you always have to push yourself. Only you know if you're resting on your laurels, right? And as ants in your pants is that creativity, that push. So what is one aspect, and I would love for you to both answer this, one aspect of your jobs that meshes with a natural part of your personality? So kind of fits like a puzzle piece.
I would just say, you know, I'm sure a lot of people say this, but just a creative outlet, I think, is what why I like doing what I do the most is just like it gives me an outlet to be creative and to constantly like problem solve and make something great that is tangible.
My Carl Jung personality type is the INFJ, which is the teacher. And as I've gotten older,
ENFJ.
ENFJ.
You're an extrovert.
Yeah. I was going to be like,
ENFJ.
Sammy, let's pause
Look,
for
I
a
sounded
minute.
all like I knew my shit. I'm pretty sure I'm an ENFJ, which is the teacher. And which a long time ago, like when I found that out, I was like, that's weird. But as I'm getting older, the greatest joy I get in a kitchen is training dishwashers how to become prep cooks, and prep cooks how to become line cooks how to become sous chefs, et cetera, et cetera. And the fact that we've done that for the last 10 years, and literally like there's people in my kitchen right now that are like chef de cuisine status that I hired as a dishwasher, and I've seen that growth and I've seen that journey, and I've done everything I could to be a part of it, but it was all on that person. But to just see that growth, I love that part about the trade, the craft of being a chef, that you have to like at a certain point give back and teach. You know, you don't just do it all yourself, like you share it, you know. That's why I like share recipes with anybody that wants them. Like, yeah, some of these recipes in the book are like the recipes that have led to my career success over and over and over again, but I'm not guarding them. I love to share them and be like, hey, these are some really cool techniques that have made me a better cook.
Yes. Yeah. And also it gives you that when you're doing something that is high level repetition, but also high level skill, like a chef, you get to that 10,000 hours mark and you know what to do. You don't have to look at your hands, right? It's kind of like playing piano. You don't have to look at your hands. It's very intuitive. But when you're learning and teaching how to lead and build teams, that's a new skill. And so then you get back to that spark of feeling like, oh, I'm learning this new skill. And then you get a little bit of a dopamine hit watching them do what you know how that feels. And I think that's a very rewarding thing. I think a lot of chefs that I've chatted with, they get over it. And I understand, because what we do, writers get over it too. It's hard, it's difficult, it's physical, but that gets you back grounded into the joy of it.
Yeah. Yeah. You have,
it's joyful.
Whatever it is, it's like you, on a bigger note, I'd say this a lot to myself and to my people. You have to protect your passion at all costs. You have to keep moving forward, keep it pushing, stay positive, protect your passion. And if you keep doing that, you won't get complacent and you won't get bored. How you interpret that versus me is different.
Right.
And it also could change depending on what season you are in life, what area you are in life, you know?
And you have to listen to yourself. Yeah.
Sometimes protecting your passion is like taking a break.
Yeah. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, for sure. All right. What is something keeping you up at night? Quick fire.
You know, just the existential dread that is the world right now.
Just that.
Yeah, just, American politics.
Jeez. I don't know, man. I feel like I'm staying up at night because I want to get as many minutes out of my day as possible. I'm just living life to the fullest.
I love it. Well, I'm so grateful to get to know you more through this process and also to continue our friendship, Sammy. And this is the question that I ask at the end of every show. And this is my magic picnic basket question. And this is a picnic basket that I can use to time travel, which I only use for my guests, not for myself. Therefore, I don't know what is up with that self-sacrifice, but I can go back and ask anybody to make one more bite of something you'd like. I can source for you, although probably I'm going to leave the seafood to y'all, and I can cook a little bit. I would love to put some things in the basket that bring you life, since I don't believe in the death penalty, and this isn't a death row meal. This is things that really just light you up when I say that. I know it shifts and changes, but since you are partnered in life and business, I would love for you to partner and build a basket together. What can I put in there for you?
I'm going to go first because it's quick and to the point. Believe it or not, I'm sticking with what I said last time. Just go back in time to the 80s and that little household I grew up in and get some of my Taita Rose's cooking, her pitas, her stews, her rice, all that good Lebanese stuff, her little hand pies, her baklava. I know Kassady would love it because I cook these recipes at home. And it would be amazing to share those authentic, straight from my grandmother's hands with her.
I agree. I would definitely add some fried chicken in there, though. And from you, I would make you. I would make you make the fried chicken.
Sammy, this isn't a gift basket. You're gonna have to work.
Yeah.
So get your ass in gear.
Go back in time to the moment where I made fried chicken and just take a couple pieces off that platter.
Smart. That's pretty smart. That's right.
I think my mom's Chinese ribs would be in there. Some biscuits that I used to make with my grandmother. And I grew up down the street from this girl named Echlem, and her family is from Israel, and her mom would be making like a dinner when we got home from school, you know, like it was like 4 o'clock, 4:30 at the latest, and dinner was on the table, but she would make homemade pita every day. Oh my God. You know, just to go along with Sammy's grandmother's spread.
Yeah, if you're doing that, let me throw my secondary Mama Shala, Hayat's Iranian woman. Let me throw some of her like gourmet sabzi, this basmati rice she would make with like a layer of crispy potatoes on the bottom, like just some killer Persian food.
Well, I tried to eat before I came, but now, per usual, I'm hungry again. So if you want to learn more about Salt and Shore, Joyce, and the upcoming Lorettas, you know where to go. You can go to thesouthernfork.com. I'm going to have links there as well as images so you can see the faces behind the voices. If you like what you hear, there are more than 370 episodes in the archives and an additional episode with Sammy Monsour. So I will make sure and link that original episode from 2020 in the show notes. But I hope that you dive in because this book, one, it's just a lovely read. Two, it also features many other guests from the Southern Fork. And I saw a bunch of friends, a bunch of people's picnic baskets in that book. So I hope that you take a listen to the archives and then get this book and play with it in the kitchen. So thank you so much for chatting with me.
Thank you so much for having us.
Great to be with you.
Hello and welcome to Talking with My Mouth Full. Today marks episode 372 of the Southern Fork, and it's a very on-brand discussion about seafood, sustainability, and the way the coastal South, both on the plate and in our imaginations, is such a part of what we term Southern. So, it's a perfect choice to be my last episode for now, maybe for always. After much consideration, I've decided to press pause on the Southern Fork and its experiences. While I know that this will seem an about face from the expansion of the last few months, it's exactly this evolution that made the next step clear. Throughout its 9-year run, the Southern Fork has grown from an idea I had to a structured show. I've been thrilled and given it my all while still working consistently as a writer, editor, or content packager on everything from grilling content for Home Depot and articles about Southern cheese to long-form essays for the bitter Southerner. Everything you see and hear, from social media to website coding to the newsletter, has been the experiment of this one-woman show and the biggest creative gift of my life thus far. That gift includes the honor of your listening, your feedback, your encouragement, even your nomination as Podcaster of the Year this year. However, something has become evident. As the podcast grows, it pulls me further away from my original forays into this field, writing and editing. Yes, that sounds logical. But what's become evident is I miss being immersed in the making of books, magazines, and newspapers. And that creative pull continues to call. so I'm heeding it. As you know, the guests of the Southern Fork are the real stars, and I'm ensuring that you'll continue to be able to hear our conversations. In the next few weeks, I'll have completed migrating most of the podcast episodes over on the Southern Fork YouTube page. So even if you lose access to the show on your favorite podcast app, you'll be able to revisit the show there. I hope you will stick around, stay with the newsletter, visit the Southern Fork's Instagram, and be able to see the new chapters that are unfolding and new horizons coming into focus around the bend. My passion for storytelling, people in the culinary trenches, sustainability, or a scoop of banana pudding is stronger than ever. I'm proud of the hard work and the depth and breadth of conversations on the Southern Fork. And I wouldn't have any of them without you listening wherever you are. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Southern Fork. I can't wait to bring you more culinary conversations, but in the meantime, I have one question. Are you gonna eat all that?